Hello and welcome to AgriRiches TV, and this is time with an agribusiness giant. Today, my agribusiness giant is a youth, and he's really doing well in the climate change space. He is currently the climate change ambassador at YMCA and the African Youth Commission. Today, I'm going to be speaking with him on climate change, and I believe you have a fair idea about climate change and how it's having an impact on agriculture. Today, we will be delving into this, and I must tell you that our guest for today has, a rich background when it comes to climate change. He spoke at the COP26 in 2021 in Scotland, and last year he was awarded as the African role model for youth development and climate change. And I'm very much privileged to be having him. But we'll go for a short break. When I come back, I'll introduce my guest to you and we'll move on with the show.
Cedric Dzelu, a young man advocating for climate change, is making global impact. Passionate about climate change advocacy, education, and mitigation approaches, this African giant in the climate space has proven his passion for creating change when he spoke at COP26 Vital Signs of the Planet concert in Scotland.
From Ghana, change agents of the world, YMCA.
A new dawn is here. It's time to advocate, educate, and inform farmers about climate change adaptation, just like Cedric is doing.
Cedric, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
good to see you.
for having us.
It's a pleasure.
So tell us, in your journey as a climate change advocate, how has it been so far?
It has been a very tough yet rewarding journey, coming from the background of student politicking, then to youth advocacy, being on the street, talking to leaders and fronting for the well-being of young people on different variety of issues, and then moving into the climate space. It is a field that I have absolutely no background in terms of education, but I got passionate about because of its impact, and then I began reading about it, then also delve into it deeply, and from there I have been able to harness my influence, my voice, and be able to connect it to the issues that concerns young people in the climate space. I must confess that it has been a very humbling journey, serving as a volunteer from climate activities such as cleanup exercise, beach cleaning front exercise, to advocating and then becoming the voice of the YMCA Ghana, rising to the African level, and then ultimately having the opportunity to represent the global YMCA movement at the world level at COP26 in Scotland, where you rightly mentioned. And then also working with the African Youth Commission and other agencies across Africa on the climate space. It has been quite a journey. It has been tough, yet fulfilling. And I am excited to find myself in this space and to be able to use my voice and my influence towards driving the climate agenda.
That's very inspiring. So let's look at, the speech you delivered at the COP26. You made mention of some, I would say, solutions. You made mention of the fact that we need to be aware of, what climate change is bringing to us. So per your research, per your, engagement with climate change enthusiasts, advocates, and all that, what is the recent development we have on climate change?
It is revealing to point out that the recent development can be traced to Sharm el-Sheikh, where the world converged in Egypt for COP27. And the most revealing development is the promulgation or the passing of the Loss and Damage Fund, where the fund was established to deal with irreparable losses as a result of the impact of the climate crisis. This has been a concern to many of us in the global south that we have advocated for, we've spoken for, and it's been long in coming. Finally, world leaders build consensus, and then they pass that particular loss and damage. And I'm excited because we are speaking about on an agriculture platform, and for all farmers, for fisher folks, and for people in the agribusiness need to concern themselves about this particular farm loss and damage. Because when the droughts do come, when the floods do come, when the sea level rises, all have serious connections with agriculture. and there's some level of losses that can actually be mitigated against, or we can adapt to, but there are some level of losses that cannot be adapted to, and that is where we talk about loss and damage.
Okay.
And it is one of the focus of climate crisis that world leaders, especially for us in the global south, are very much concerned about. And I think that people in the various communities, and especially in the agribusiness, must take cognizance of, must take interest of, and participate in that fund and look at ways that they can actually harness the gains of that fund for all its intents and purposes.
Okay, so you already mentioned that climate change has an impact on agriculture. So when we look at Africa, are we adapting to the situation? Are we adapting to the fact that a time is coming, and even it's happening now? I mean, climate change is really affecting agriculture. Are we really adapting to the situation, or you think by 2050, as documentaries and experts have said, that we are going to be feeding about 9 billion people globally? So, are we going to be able to meet up to that and adapt to, the call for climate change adaptation?
The question is very touching, especially when we at the forefront of the advocacy have come to realize time with a number, that the level of adaptation that is needed in the space is not as we expect. Look, let me tell you, it saddens me that there are people in the various community that are unable to connect the impact of the climate crisis to drought, to yield loss, and to the many impact or fall short of what agricultural business. And so there are people who still think that when there's drought, they connect it or they associate it to other mysteries or superstitions. For instance, they say that when there's drought, it means that the gods are angry with them. You understand me? When they are unable to catch fish, and they say that their sins have caused all this. And when you are unable to prefer or to be able to define the solution appropriately, or to define the question appropriately, I should say, then you will not be able to prefer the solution. So if you say that the drought is as a result of the gods being angry with you, then when you are preparing solution, then you are going to think about how to appease the gods. But when you're able to define the problem of drought truly in the context of climate change, and you know that it is because of the climate crisis, that is why the rains are not coming down. Then when you are preferring solution, you will look at adaptation strategies of how to see how to be able to harness rainwater or groundwater, how to preserve it, and how to release it to the plant as and when needed. Because you have been able to justifiably identify the right questions and you prefer the solution. So I agree that there are different varied levels of adaptation that are going on across the country and across the continent. However, I must confess, the scale of adaptation is very minimal. That people are still in the realm of superstition. That people are still in the realm of fanciful, ideologies as to why the yields is coming down and the drought is coming up. So one would need education to be able to sweep a massive level of education across our communities. That is why I'm excited to grant this interview, because your platform is reaching far and near, touching the base of our society. People who do not have audience with the regular media are getting the news from your platform. And that is why I'm excited to be here and to be able to push the agenda that one, let us engage in education. Two, we need to ensure that when we say adaptation, we need to ensure that we get the financing down to the local base and we get the technology down to the local base.
And is that not a major issue, financing?
It is a colossal issue, financing. Because, I went to a place where someone was speaking to me and then, spoke in Chi and said that the crowd sending in Jessica. That, after all of the talks, after all of the strategies, money, financing is needed to provide the adaptation. Because look, whether you are looking at putting up irrigation dams or putting up, technological issues that would, innovations that will harness the rain or the water and release it to the plant at a particular time, all of these technologies requires funding. And so there's a big financing gap in the climate space.
Okay.
And we need financing to ensure that we put these tools, these technologies in the hands of the ordinary farmers, fisher folks, and all those along the value chain of agriculture. Unfortunately, many of these people along the value chain of agriculture do not have the financing to purchase this technology, to purchase this information, the tools that they need. And that is why people like me are at the forefront of this advocacy, working with institutions, with government, with civil societies, and businessmen, and of course our foreign partners, to ensure that we will be able to cascade the financing, bring it down, and put it in the hands of those who truly need it.
Okay. So is there any program coming up as such in terms of climate change education?
There are a lot of programs coming up. Let me start with myself. So, as an ambassador of the YMCA and working at the African Youth Commission, I have also concerned myself with, the creating public awareness and educating people on climate change.
Okay.
And so I have a project coming up. It's actually a project that the YMCA provide them with funding grants to provide climate change education and awareness to people in the localities. And I've selected my community where I'm staying at the Adabraka to provide climate adaptation mechanism and awareness strategies to the people of Adabraka to ensure that they are more adaptable and more resilient against the flooding. And I christened this project Attack the Flood. Attack the Flood.
Oh, okay.
Attack the Flood. Attack the Flood because if you, for instance, you go Adabraka, one of the things that will pop up is floods.
It's flood, yeah.
It's perennial. Just 2 hours.
Then the whole place is flooded.
Of rainfall, the whole place is flooded, and people lose their properties, people lose their businesses, their livelihoods. In certain cases, people lose their lives. So this project is focused on how do we provide information, simple but technical information, to the people before the floods, after the floods, during the floods. What do they need to do to ensure that they do not fall victims, colossal victims, to the impact of the crisis? And this is the second phase. The first phase was fantastic. Our partners, the World YMCA and the American YMCA, they've been so excited about this outcome of the project, and they've released second tranche of funding to support this cause. And the people themselves have received reports across the length and breadth of the community of the fact that they have seen a drastic reduction in the level of damage and impact that they confront or that they are confronted with anytime that there is flooding. And today, most of this information we've given them, have become more of their salvation tools to protect their properties, to protect their businesses and their lives. And that many of them today, even if there's floods, they do no longer suffer the damages that they suffer in the past. And I'm excited that myself and my colleagues at the YMCA, a group of vibrant, young, energetic young people are at the forefront of this development with the support and funding from the YMCA. Beyond me, there are other projects, across the country. You, I'm sure, have heard of the Ministry of Environment, Lands and Natural Resources. You've heard of the Forestry Commission doing fantastic work in this space. We have heard of the tree planting exercise, to bring up trees to ensure that the trees will serve their purpose of the carbon sink, and to also, the greenery environment, and to promote, the climate agenda. There are other organizations like SEND, like Green Dialogue, that are at the forefront of various interventions that are focused towards addressing the many different impact of the climate crisis.
So I was speaking to Mr. Cedric Dzelu, a climate change ambassador at YMCA and the African Youth Commission, and I must say that he's revealing a lot to us about climate change. But I believe you, as a farmer or investor or a business personality in the agribusiness sector, you are watching us. And Mr. Cedric, many people are farmers, and they are watching us. There's a research that farmers are, adopting some measures that are not favorable to the climate and are even worsening the situation. So in just, a brief, can you tell us what farmers should be doing now? Because as we know, for example, farmers are using, inorganic fertilizers, chemical fertilizers and all that, and that is causing harm to the environment and even to the crops that we are growing. So, in a brief, can you tell us, something to the farmers?
As you rightly said, there's no denying the fact that farmers across the country and even beyond in most parts of Africa are engaging in farming practices that jeopardizes, the state of the environment and even their own farms.
Okay.
But this is coming at the background of the fact that they are thinking of the short term, thinking of the next farming season, their yields and the harvest season. And so what can they do for a very short turnaround, to get their produce to the market and sell?
Profits,
However, if there's any farmer, who is watching, I believe many of them are watching, I want to say that the long-term impact, the long-term improvement, the long-term progress of every practice far more outweighs the short term. And so if you are engaging in short-term practices, that will come at a great cost. In the long term, then definitely you should not. And so the concern now should be that I want to challenge every farmer, wherever they may be, that before they engage in any form of agriculture practices, the use of any form of fertilizer or technology or tool, they should ask themselves, what is the carbon footprint of their exercise? What is the climate impact of their exercise? They should be able to assess that in the short term vis-a-vis the long term. And when they are able to look at this analysis, and they come to realize that if I use this particular fertilizer in the short term, I may get my yield, but in the long term, it damages my soil, damages the environment, and in 2-3 years, my soil will not be nutritious enough and will not be able to hold a lot of nutrient to feed the plant.
Yeah.
Because it is said that the farm or the produce in the farm are as healthy and the yield are as productive as the worm in the ground. And so if the worms in the ground that naturally tend to feed the plant, okay,
Nutrients, yeah.
the nutrients in the entire ecosystem, if you kill all those nutrients because of the short term, to come at a great loss. Okay. So the challenge once again is that every farmer should be concerned about each practice and to invite the agric extension officers so that they are able to assess the real impact of their farming practices in the short term against long term. Then they will be able to advise themselves whether it is productive to do that or not. And when they come to that position, then they will know that yes, if in the short term I may get 60% of the yield for this farming season, but in the long term, after year 1, year 2, year 3, I'm going to get 90% or 95%, of produce harvested. And so this is the kind of education that we are putting across. And I want to say that it is about time that farmers are concerned about the climate, because we are living in an ecosystem, and that we cannot operate in silos. Everything is connected to the other.
Yeah.
Before the seed gets to the ground, the soil, the fertilizer, the environment, the sun, the water, all of these must be serving at its optimal level.
Okay.
So you cannot just go for a good seedling when in the ground, or then there's no nutrient in the soil, or when the rains are not coming. So we need to look at all of the parts of the agricultural business as a whole, as an ecosystem. So I don't only think of your fertilizer or your seedling, but think of the other allied services and allied components that will make your farming produce come alive. And when farmers are beginning to think in this light, in such an ecosystemic processes, then they're into real business. Then they are said to be adapting to the impact of the climate crisis, and that is where they'll become resilient and to overcome the shocks of the climate crisis.
Okay. So let me take your final words. What is the state of agriculture, in your opinion, in Ghana?
When I was a very young boy, agriculture was said to be, the first basket that supports the economy of the country. Today, sadly, it is not. It is the service sector, then to the manufacturing sector. Why so? Because the business of agriculture has been left, to a level I would say localized, where the branding, the whole marketing, and the business around it has not, shot up to the level that we want it to be.
Okay.
And the point that I seek to put across is that agriculture has so much to offer to our country. And when we begin to look at it from the lens of full-scale business, full-scale manufacturing, large-scale business, and we begin to empower farmers, agri-extension officers, young people in agriculture, young agribusinesses, and we give it the right attention, then we can bring agriculture back to number one. Okay. Then agriculture can serve its purpose. Look, let me tell you, there are many, many young people who move from the farms, from the villages, come to Accra. From Accra, some travel outside. And when they go outside, they go to farm. Banana farm.
Farming is very
plantation farm.
I think we have seen it here.
But they are not willing to farm in their own communities. Why? Because it is not made lucrative enough.
Yeah.
There. So the challenge now is to government, to civil societies, to businesses, to make the business of agriculture lucrative enough to entice the young people, to invite the young people, so that people can begin to bring investment, technology, and innovation into the sector. And there, we will be comparing ourselves with Singapore, a country that came to learn from us on how to do palm plantation. And today, they are far gone. And we would have come to a state where we're proud of our own agriculture system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cedric.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us here.
Perfect.
So this is time with an agribusiness giant, and my agribusiness giant today is a youth who is leading global climate change advocacy, also climate change education, adaptation, and mitigation approaches, and is also into youth-led solutions to addressing the climate change crisis. So as I said in my intro, in 2021, he spoke at the COP26, that's a vital signs of the planet's concert in Scotland, the annual United Nations Climate Summit. And in 2022, he was honored by Otumfuo Osei Tutu Dasantini as the Africa role model in youth development and climate change. So currently he serves as a climate change ambassador at YMCA and the African Youth Commission. So my guest has really given us more insights into climate change, and I hope you really took some information. As a farmer, as an agribusiness person, note that climate change has a long-lasting impact on agriculture, and it's a time that we need to bring out innovative measures to actually mitigate the challenges posed by climate change. My name is Prince Opokudube. Meet you same time next week.